The rain drummed against the tin roof of my garage like impatient fingers, and I was elbow-deep in carburetor parts when I heard my wife Vera talking on her phone in the kitchen. The words drifted through the thin walls of our fixer-upper house like poison gas. Once I get the ring, I'm leaving him for you, Pierce. He's so pathetic, thinking I actually love him. I froze, my wrench suspended over the engine block. Vera Velden, my wife of 3 years, was planning her escape, and apparently she thought I was too stupid to notice. My name is Soren Velden, and I'm a construction estimator here in Calhoun, a town that's been slowly rotting away since the mill closed 15 years ago. I spent 2 tours in Afghanistan before coming home to this place where everyone knows your business before you do. I thought I'd found peace with Vara, but apparently I'd just found another kind of war. The jewelry store appointment is next week, Vera continued, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. Once the appraiser confirms it's worth what Soren claims, I'll have enough leverage to take half of everything. I wiped my hands on an old rag and crept closer to the kitchen door. Through the crack, I could see her pacing back and forth, her blonde hair catching the overhead light. She looked beautiful, as always. Too bad beauty doesn't cure ugly intentions. Don't worry about Soren, she laughed. He's too trusting. Always has been. That's what makes him such an easy mark. Pierce Eldro. I knew that name. He was Vara's boss at Hartwell Insurance, the kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits and drove a Tesla through our pothole-riddled streets like he owned the place. Apparently, he thought he owned my wife, too. I backed away from the door and returned to my workbench, my mind racing. The ring Vara was talking about was my grandmother's engagement ring, a family heirloom I'd given her when I proposed. She thought it was worth a fortune. She was wrong about that, just like she was wrong about me being too stupid to catch on. The next morning, Vera left for work with a kiss on my cheek that felt like a snake bite. I waited until her Honda disappeared around the corner, then drove to Murphy's pawn shop on the wrong side of town. Soren Velden, Murphy greeted me from behind his bulletproof glass. What brings you to my establishment? I need a ring, Murphy. Something that looks expensive but isn't. Murphy's eyes lit up with curiosity, but he was smart enough not to ask questions. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a cubic zirconia ring in a fancy box. Cost me $50, but it looked like it could buy a house. My next stop was Ingersoll's office downtown. Harold Ingersoll had been handling legal paperwork in Calhoun since before I was born. His office smelled like old books and broken dreams. Soren, good to see you, Ingersoll said, adjusting his thick glasses. What can I do for you? I want to set up a trust, Harold. Something that protects my assets if anything happens to my marriage. Ingersoll raised an eyebrow but pulled out the necessary paperwork. Having some troubles at home? Let's just say I believe in being prepared. Within an hour, I'd transferred most of our joint assets into a trust that Vera couldn't touch. The beauty of it was that everything looked normal on the surface. She'd never know until she tried to grab the money. That afternoon, I stopped by the Iron Pike, the riverside bar where the town's secrets flowed as freely as the whiskey. Eddie Riggs Riggins, my old army buddy, owned the place. He was wiping down glasses when I walked in. You look like a man with a plan, Riggs said, pouring me a beer without being asked. Maybe I am. Tell me, what do you know about Pierce Eldro? Riggs' expression darkened. Eldro? That snake? He's been sniffing around half the married women in town. Why? Just curious. Soren, whatever you're thinking, be careful. Guys like Eldro have connections. They play dirty. I took a long sip of my beer and smiled. So do I. That evening, Vera came home late, claiming she'd been working on a big insurance claim. She smelled like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. I pretended to believe her story, even asked interested questions about her work. She ate it up, probably thinking about how easy I was to fool. Honey, I said as we sat down to dinner, I've been thinking about our future. Oh? She tried to look interested, but I could see her mind was elsewhere. I want to renew our vows, make it special this time, maybe get you a new ring to go with it. Vera's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. A new ring? But I love this one. I know, but I want everyone to see how much you mean to me. I'm thinking about having this one appraised first, just to make sure our insurance covers it properly. The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. That's very thoughtful, Soren. I already made an appointment at Kellerman's Jewelry downtown. Next Wednesday at 2. I thought we could make an event of it. Invite some people from your office. Vara's smile looked like it was carved from ice. Wonderful. That night, I lay in bed listening to her breathe, planning my next move. She thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. Time to show her that some of us country boys learned a few things in the service. The next morning, I accidentally sent a text to Kayla Morrison, Vera's best friend and the biggest gossip in Calhoun. The message was simple. Can't wait to see everyone's faces at the jewelry store Wednesday. This should be interesting. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with confused responses. By noon, half the town would be wondering what was happening at Kellerman's on Wednesday. Perfect. I spent the rest of the week preparing, moving pieces into position like a general planning a campaign. Vara grew more nervous each day, making excuses to avoid the jewelry store appointment, but I was persistent, reminding her how important it was to me. Everyone's going to be so impressed, I told her Tuesday night. Pierce said he might stop by too. Apparently Kayla mentioned it to him. Vara went pale. Pierce doesn't need to come? Nonsense. He's your boss. It'll be good for him to see what a lucky guy I am. Wednesday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching Vera's mood perfectly. She barely touched her breakfast and kept checking her phone every few minutes. Nervous about something? I asked innocently. Just work stuff, she muttered. Well, after today, you'll have one less thing to worry about. I had no idea how right I was. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Wednesday afternoon, I picked up Vera from her office for our appointment at Kellerman's Jewelry. She sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap like she was heading to her own execution. In a way, she was. You seem tense, I observed, taking the long way through downtown Calhoun. The streets were lined with empty storefronts and faded dreams, but today they looked almost cheerful to me. I'm fine, Vera snapped, then caught herself. Sorry, honey, just a long day at work? Pierce keeping you busy? Her head whipped toward me so fast I thought she might get whiplash. What do you mean? Just that you've been working late a lot lately. He must really value your dedication. Vera turned back to the window, but I caught her reflection. She looked like she was about to be sick. Kellerman's Jewelry sat on Main Street between a closed diner and a shop that had been temporarily closed for 5 years. But old man Kellerman kept his place pristine, a diamond in the rough of our fading downtown. As we pulled up, I spotted Pierce's black Tesla parked across the street. Right on time. Kayla's red Camaro was there too, along with a few other cars I recognized from around town. Word had spread, just like I'd planned. Looks like we have an audience, I said cheerfully. Vara's face went from pale to green. Maybe we should reschedule. Nonsense. Everyone's here to support us. I got out and walked around to open her door, playing the perfect gentleman. Vara climbed out slowly, like a condemned woman walking to the gallows. The bell above Kellerman's door chimed as we entered. The shop was crowded for a Wednesday afternoon. Pierce stood near the back, trying to look casual in his expensive suit. Kayla was by the counter, practically vibrating with curiosity. Mrs. Gulliver, our nosy neighbor, had somehow materialized near the window display. Even Riggs had shown up, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Mr. and Mrs. Velden, old man Kellerman greeted us warmly. Ready for that appraisal? Absolutely, I said, squeezing Vera's hand. Her palm was slick with sweat. My wife is so excited to find out what this beauty is worth. Vera fumbled with the ring box, her hands shaking slightly. She managed to get it open and handed it to Kellerman, who put on his jeweler's loupe and examined the stone under a bright light. The shop fell silent except for the tick of an old clock on the wall. I could feel everyone holding their breath, waiting for the verdict. Pierce had moved closer, his face tight with concern. Kellerman frowned and looked closer. Then he removed the loupe and looked directly at Vera. Ma'am, I'm afraid there's been some mistake. Mistake? Vera's voice came out as a squeak. This isn't a diamond. It's cubic zirconia. A very good fake, but a fake nonetheless. It's worth maybe $50 retail. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Vera stared at the ring like it had turned into a snake. That's impossible, she whispered. I'm sorry, but I've been doing this for 40 years. This stone was never worth more than the cost of dinner for two. Kayla gasped audibly. Mrs. Gulliver's eyes went wide. Pierce looked like someone had punched him in the stomach, but I just smiled. Well, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, I guess that settles that. Vara, honey, you look surprised. Didn't you know? Every eye in the shop turned to my wife. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I continued, my voice carrying that friendly tone I used when I was about to drop a hammer. You've been wearing it for 3 years. Surely you must have suspected it wasn't real. Pierce stepped forward, probably trying to save the situation. Maybe there's been some confusion. Oh, there's been confusion, all right. I interrupted, reaching into my jacket pocket. But not about the ring. I pulled out an envelope and handed it to Pierce. This is for you, Pierce, from your biggest fan. Pierce opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were printouts of text messages between him and Vera, along with photos I'd taken of them together at a motel outside town. His face went from concerned to horrified as he flipped through the pages. Where did you get these? He demanded. Does it matter? The question is, what are you going to do about it? Vera finally found her voice. Soren, what is this? This, my dear wife, is what we call consequences. I turned to address the entire shop. You see, folks, my wife here has been planning to leave me. She thought this ring was valuable enough to give her leverage in a divorce. She also thought I was too stupid to notice she was having an affair with her boss. The shop erupted in whispers and gasps. Kayla's hand flew to her mouth. Mrs. Gulliver looked like Christmas had come early. Pierce tried to recover. This is ridiculous. I don't know what kind of game you're playing. No game, Pierce. Just good old-fashioned truth-telling. I looked around the room. See, Pierce here has been promising my wife all sorts of things. A new life, financial security, freedom from her boring husband. The only problem is, Pierce is married too. Aren't you, Pierce? Pierce's face had gone completely white. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. You understand too, don't you, Vara? You understand that Pierce was never going to leave his wife for you. He was just having some fun on the side. Vera looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Soren, please what? Please don't tell everyone what you've been doing. Please don't mention how you've been stealing from our joint accounts to pay for your little romantic getaways. I pulled out another piece of paper. Bank statements, folks. Very interesting reading. Pierce made a move toward the door, but Riggs shifted position, blocking his path. My old army buddy had a way of looking intimidating without saying a word. Where are you going, Pierce? I asked. Oh, the party's just getting started. This is harassment, Pierce sputtered. I'll call the police. Go ahead. I'm sure they'd love to hear about your extracurricular activities, especially since some of them involve company funds. That stopped him cold. I'd been bluffing about the company funds, but his reaction told me I'd hit close to home. Kellerman cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take this outside. No need, I said, taking the fake ring back from him. We're done here. Vara, I think it's time we had a talk about our future, or rather, our lack of one. I headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Pierce? You might want to check your email when you get back to the office. I sent some very interesting photos to the main company account. I'm sure HR will find them educational. The last thing I heard as we left the shop was Pierce's strangled cry of, You can't do this! But I already had. The ride home from Kellerman's was the longest 15 minutes of my life. Vera sat frozen in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead like she was in shock. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You want to explain yourself? I finally asked as we pulled into our driveway. Soren, Save it. I turned off the engine and looked at her. 3 years, Vara. 3 years I trusted you. 3 years I thought we were building something together. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. How was it supposed to happen? You were going to clean out our accounts and disappear with Pierce? Leave me a note on the kitchen table? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my truck. Go pack whatever you need for tonight. You can stay at Kayla's or wherever. Just get out of my house. Soren, please, we can work this out. The time for working things out was before you decided to cheat on me with your boss. The time for working things out was before you planned to rob me blind. Get out. Vera stumbled out of the truck like she was sleepwalking. I sat there for a moment, watching her walk toward the house we'd shared, the house I'd thought we'd grow old in together. My phone buzzed with a text from Riggs. Holy smokes, brother, that was something else. You okay? I texted back, just getting started. That evening, I sat in my garage with a beer and planned my next moves. Vera had packed a bag and left without another word. The house felt different without her, but not empty. If anything, it felt cleaner. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Pierce Eldrow's name appeared on the screen. Well, I answered. How did the rest of your day go, Pierce? You son of a... He caught himself. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the Iron Pike in an hour. Why would I want to do that? Because if you don't, I'll make your life very difficult. I have friends in this town, Velden, people who can make problems for you. I laughed. Pierce, you just got caught cheating on your wife with an employee. Your company is probably reviewing your conduct as we speak. What exactly do you think you can do to me that's worse than what you've already done to yourself? Just be there, he snarled, and hung up. I finished my beer and headed to the Iron Pike. Riggs was behind the bar when I walked in, and he gave me a look that said he'd heard about Pierce's call. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. "He wants to talk. I'm curious what he has to say." Pierce was already there, sitting in a corner booth with his expensive suit wrinkled and his hair messed up. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since the afternoon. "You look terrible," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "You've ruined me," he said without preamble. "I didn't ruin you, Pierce. I just showed everyone who you really are. My wife left me. The company put me on administrative leave pending an investigation. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've given you the same consideration you gave me. How does it feel?" Pierce leaned forward, his eyes hard. "This isn't over, Velden. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea who you're dealing with. Enlighten me. I know people who can make your life very unpleasant. Maybe your construction company loses some contracts. Maybe you have trouble getting permits. Maybe worse things happen." I leaned back and smiled. "Are you threatening me, Pierce?" "I'm explaining reality to you." "Here's some reality for you," I said, pulling out my phone. "I've been recording this conversation, so now I have you on tape threatening me. How do you think that's going to play with the police?" Pierce's face went white. "You can't what? Can't protect myself from a man who's already proven he has no morals? Can't document threats made against me by someone who's desperate and angry?" I stood up. "Pierce, you made a mistake when you decided to mess with my marriage, but you made a bigger mistake just now when you threatened me. I was willing to let this end with public humiliation. Now I'm thinking maybe I need to take this further." "What do you want?" he asked desperately. "I want you to disappear. Leave town. Find another job somewhere else. Take your threats and your expensive suits and get out of Calhoun." "I can't just leave. I have a career here. Obligations. Had a career. Past tense." I headed for the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Pierce? If anything happens to me, my truck, my house, or my business, I've left instructions with several people about where to find all the evidence I've collected about your activities. Some of it involves more than just my wife." That was a bluff, but Pierce didn't know that. He sat there looking like a broken man as I walked away. Outside the Iron Pike, I found my truck's tires slashed, all 4 of them cut clean through with a knife. I stood there looking at the damage and shook my head. Pierce was stupider than I'd thought. I called Riggs, who came out to look at the damage. "This is escalating," he said. "You sure you want to keep pushing?" He pushed first when he decided to steal my wife. Now he's pushed again by threatening me and vandalizing my property. I'm just pushing back. "What's your next move?" I looked back toward the bar, where Pierce was probably still sitting in his booth, thinking he'd won some kind of victory. "I'm going to show him what happens when you bring a knife to a gunfight." The next morning, I called in a favor from a buddy who worked at the impound lot. Pierce's Tesla was parked outside his apartment complex, gleaming black and perfect. It wouldn't be perfect much longer. I didn't slash his tires or key his paint. That would have been juvenile. Instead, I did something much more creative. I mixed up a batch of concrete and poured it into his exhaust pipe. Then I put a sign under his windshield wiper. "Courtesy of the Calhoun Welcoming Committee." By the time Pierce discovered the damage and had his car towed, half the town had seen it. The story spread like wildfire, growing more elaborate with each telling. But I wasn't done, not even close. That afternoon, I drove to Hartwell Insurance and walked into the lobby like I owned the place. The receptionist, a young woman named Tracy, looked nervous when she saw me. "Mr. Velden," she said carefully, "how can I help you?" "I'd like to speak with whoever's in charge while Pierce is on leave." "That would be Mr. Hartwell himself, but he's very busy. Tell him Soren Velden is here about Pierce Eldro and company policy violations. I think he'll make time." 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from Douglas Hartwell, a man in his 60s who'd built his insurance company from nothing. He had the look of someone who'd seen every kind of fraud and deception the world had to offer. "Mr. Velden," he said, "I understand you have concerns about one of my employees." "Former employee, I hope." I placed a folder on his desk. "Everything you need to know about Pierce Eldro's conduct is in there: bank records, hotel receipts, company credit card statements, photos, text messages. He's been using company resources to conduct an affair with my wife." Hartwell opened the folder and began reading. His expression grew darker with each page. "This is quite thorough," he said finally. "I'm a detail-oriented person, Mr. Hartwell. It comes from my military training." "I see that. Mr. Velden, I want you to know that Hartwell Insurance does not tolerate this kind of behavior from our employees. Mr. Eldro's employment with us is terminated, effective immediately." "I appreciate that, sir." However, Hartwell continued, I have to ask, what do you want from me? You've already exposed Mr. Eldro publicly. His career in this town is over. What more are you looking for? I leaned forward. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Pierce Eldro is a predator who targets married women and uses his position of authority to manipulate them. He needs to face consequences that go beyond just losing his job. What kind of consequences? I want him gone from Calhoun, permanently, and I want everyone in town to know exactly why he's leaving. Hartwell studied me for a long moment. Mr. Velden, I understand your anger, but be careful not to let revenge consume you. Sometimes the best victory is simply moving on. With respect, sir, I'll decide when I've had enough revenge. I left Hartwell's office feeling satisfied but not finished. Pierce had made this personal when he threatened me. Now I was going to make it permanent. The next few days passed quietly, but it was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Vera had been staying at Kayla's apartment across town, and according to the local gossip network, she wasn't handling the situation well. Pierce had holed up in his apartment, apparently trying to figure out his next move now that he was unemployed and his marriage was over. I spent the time preparing for what I knew was coming. Men like Pierce don't just disappear quietly. They scheme, they plot, and they usually make things worse for themselves in the process. I was right. Friday evening, I was working late in my garage when I heard voices outside. Through the window, I could see Pierce and two men I didn't recognize standing by his rental car. Pierce was pointing at my house and talking animatedly. I slipped out the back door and circled around to get closer. The two strangers looked like the kind of guys you'd hire when you needed something unpleasant done. They were discussing my daily routine, where I parked my truck, when I was usually home alone. Pierce was hiring muscle. The idiot was actually trying to intimidate me with hired thugs. I retreated to my garage and called Riggs. I need backup, I said quietly. Pierce is outside with two guys who look like trouble. On my way, Riggs replied without hesitation. 20 minutes later, Riggs pulled up in his pickup truck. He wasn't alone. 3 other guys climbed out with him, all of them veterans who'd served with us overseas. In Calhoun, when one veteran had trouble, we all had trouble. Pierce and his hired help were still standing by their car when we walked out to meet them. The balance of power had shifted dramatically in the last 20 minutes. Evening, Pierce, I called out cheerfully. Lovely night for a visit. Who are your friends? Pierce looked nervous as he realized he was now outnumbered. These gentlemen are business associates of mine. What kind of business? Riggs asked, stepping up beside me. The kind that involves lurking outside someone's house after dark? One of Pierce's companions, a thick-set man with tattoos covering his forearms, stepped forward. We're just having a conversation. Conversation's over, said Jake Morrison, one of our group. Time for you boys to move along. This is a public street, Tattoo Guy replied. We can stand wherever we want. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, you can't. This is called stalking, and it's illegal. I've been recording your whole conversation about my schedule and my habits. I'm sure the police would find it very interesting. Pierce's face went pale. You recorded us? I record everything now, Pierce. It's amazing how useful that habit has become. The second stranger, a thin man with nervous eyes, tugged on Pierce's sleeve. Maybe we should go, man. This isn't worth it. But Pierce was too angry to think straight. You think you've won something, Velden? You think ruining my life makes you some kind of hero? I didn't ruin your life, Pierce. You did that all by yourself when you decided to cheat with my wife and then threaten me. She came to me, Pierce snarled. Vora couldn't stand being married to a loser like you. She wanted a real man. That was the wrong thing to say in front of 4 combat veterans. Riggs took a step forward, his hands clenched into fists. You want to repeat that? Pierce realized he'd made a mistake, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. You heard me. Vora told me all about her pathetic husband who couldn't satisfy her in any way that mattered. I put a hand on Riggs' arm to stop him from doing something we'd all regret. Pierce, you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life. What are you going to do? Beat me up? That'll look great when I press charges. I smiled. I'm not going to touch you, Pierce. I don't need to. I held up my phone, which had been recording the entire conversation. You just admitted to having an affair with my wife. You brought hired muscle to my house to intimidate me. You made threatening statements in front of multiple witnesses, and you did it all while you're already under investigation by your former employer and facing potential criminal charges for misuse of company funds. Pierce's confident expression crumbled as he realized what he'd done. But here's the really beautiful part, I continued. This conversation is being live-streamed to my social media accounts. Everyone in Calhoun is watching this right now. Pierce grabbed for my phone, but Riggs caught his wrist and twisted it behind his back in one smooth motion. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Riggs said calmly. Let me go. Pierce struggled against Riggs' grip. Sure thing. Riggs released him with a little shove that sent Pierce stumbling backward into his rental car. Pierce's two companions had apparently seen enough. They were already walking away, leaving their employer to face the consequences alone. Looks like your backup is abandoning you, I observed. Guess they're smarter than you are. Pierce straightened his jacket and tried to recover some dignity. This isn't over, Velden. Yes, it is. I stepped closer to him, close enough that only he could hear my next words. Pierce, you have 24 hours to leave Calhoun. If I see you after that, I'll assume you're here to cause more trouble, and I'll respond accordingly. You can't make me leave town. I'm not making you do anything. I'm just explaining the natural consequences of your choices. You've made enemies here, Pierce. Lots of them. People don't like men who cheat on their wives and threaten their neighbors. They especially don't like men who hire thugs to intimidate veterans. I stepped back and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Of course, if you want to stay in Calhoun and face the music, that's your choice. I'm sure it'll be very educational for you. Pierce looked around at the faces surrounding him. None of them were friendly. In the distance, I could see neighbors coming out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Gulliver was recording everything with her phone from her front porch. This is harassment, Pierce said weakly. No, I replied. This is justice. There's a difference. Pierce climbed into his rental car without another word. As he drove away, I could see him talking frantically on his phone, probably calling Vera to tell her how badly things had gone. Riggs clapped me on the shoulder. Think he'll leave town? He'll leave. Men like Pierce are bullies, and bullies fold when someone stands up to them. But I was wrong about Pierce. I'd underestimated how desperate he'd become, and how far he was willing to go to get revenge. The next morning, I woke up to find police cars in my driveway. Detective Ray Kowalski was a good cop who'd known me since I was a kid, getting into trouble behind the high school. He stood on my front porch with an expression that mixed sympathy with professional duty. Morning, Soren, he said. We need to talk. About what, Ray? Pierce Eldro filed a complaint against you, says you threatened him, vandalized his car, and organized a group of men to intimidate him. I invited Ray inside and poured us both coffee. Did he mention why I might have done those things? He mentioned something about a misunderstanding involving your wife. Misunderstanding, I laughed bitterly. Is that what we're calling adultery now? Ray sipped his coffee and studied me. Soren, I've known you a long time. You're not the kind of man who goes looking for trouble, but Pierce Eldro has connections in this state. He's called in some favors, and there are people putting pressure on the department to take his complaint seriously. What kind of pressure? The kind that comes from lawyers and political contacts. The kind that makes my boss nervous. I set down my coffee cup. Ray, are you here to arrest me? Not yet, but I need you to understand that this situation is escalating beyond what either of us can control locally. Pierce has hired a lawyer from Albany, and they're talking about filing charges for stalking, harassment, and criminal mischief. Based on what evidence? Based on witnesses to your confrontation last night, photos of his damaged car, and testimony from him and your wife about threatening behavior. My wife? That surprised me. Vera is cooperating with him? According to Pierce's lawyer, yes. They're claiming you've been unstable since discovering the affair, and that you've made threats against both of them. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Vera was actively working against me now, helping Pierce build a case that could send me to prison. Ray, I need you to see something. I led him to my computer and showed him the recordings I'd made of Pierce's threats, his admission of the affair, and his attempt to intimidate me with hired muscle. Ray watched the videos with growing interest. This changes things significantly. I figured it might. Soren, I have to ask, did you damage Pierce's car? I looked Ray straight in the eye. I may have expressed my displeasure with his behavior in a creative way. That's not a legal defense. Maybe not, but it's an honest answer. Ray finished his coffee and stood up. Here's what's going to happen. Pierce and his lawyer are meeting with the district attorney this afternoon. They're going to present their case and ask for charges to be filed against you. And I'm going to be there to present your evidence as well. Those recordings you made show Pierce making threats and admitting to criminal behavior. They also show him bringing hired muscle to your house, which is intimidation at minimum. Will that be enough? I don't know. But Soren, you need to understand that this is your last chance to handle this legally. If you do anything else to escalate this situation, I won't be able to help you. After Ray left, I sat in my kitchen and thought about my options. I could wait and hope the legal system would protect me, or I could take control of the situation myself. I chose control. That afternoon, while Pierce was meeting with lawyers, I drove to Kayla's apartment complex. Vera's Honda was parked outside, confirming she was there. I knocked on the door and waited. Kayla answered, looking nervous when she saw me. "Soren, maybe this isn't a good time." "It's the perfect time." I pushed past her into the apartment. Vora was sitting on the couch, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She looked up when I entered, and I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Fear. "Hello, Vara." "Soren, you shouldn't be here." "Probably not, but we need to have a conversation about your new career as a witness for the prosecution." Kayla started to leave, but I stopped her. "Stay, Kayla. You're part of this too." "Part of what?" Kayla asked. "The lies you've been telling to help Pierce build a case against me." Vera stood up, trying to look defiant. "I told the truth. You've been threatening us, vandalizing property, acting like a crazy person." "Have I?" I pulled out my phone and started playing one of my recordings. Pierce's voice filled the room, making threats and admitting to the affair. Both women went pale as they listened. "That's illegal recording," Vera said weakly. "Actually, it's not. New York is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal." I played another recording, this one of Vera talking to Pierce about stealing money from our joint accounts. "Funny thing about these recordings," I continued. "They tell a very different story than the one you've been telling Pierce's lawyer." Kayla found her voice. "What do you want, Soren?" "I want the truth. I want you both to stop lying to help Pierce destroy me." "And if we don't?" Vora asked. I smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Then everyone in Calhoun gets to hear these recordings. Every conversation, every lie, every plan you made to betray me. I'll play them at the town festival next weekend when everyone's gathered in the park." "You wouldn't dare," Vera whispered. "Try me." I headed for the door, then turned back. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Either you tell Pierce's lawyer the truth, or I tell the whole town everything." That evening, I got a call from Ray Kowalski. "The DA declined to file charges," he said. "What happened?" "Your recordings happened. Pierce's lawyer tried to paint you as an unstable veteran with anger management issues, but when we played those recordings, the whole narrative fell apart." "And Pierce?" "Pierce is facing potential charges of his own now. Turns out some of those company credit card charges you documented were clearly fraudulent. The DA's office is very interested in talking to him about that." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "So it's over?" "It's over, Soren. Pierce left town this afternoon, packed up his apartment, and drove away without telling anyone where he was going." After hanging up with Ray, I sat on my front porch and watched the sun set over Calhoun. The town looked peaceful in the golden light, like a place where people could build good lives if they were willing to work for them. My phone buzzed with a text from Vera. "I'm sorry, for everything. I deleted the message without responding. Some apologies come too late to matter." The next morning, I filed for divorce. By the end of the week, Vara had moved out of state, following Pierce to whatever hole he'd crawled into. Kayla tried to stay in Calhoun, but the gossip network that had once been her power base turned against her. Within a month, she was gone too. I kept the house, the truck, and most of our assets. The trust I'd set up had protected everything that mattered, but more importantly, I kept my self-respect. I'd faced down a man who thought he could destroy me, and I'd won using nothing but preparation, patience, and the truth. Some people in town said I'd gone too far, that revenge wasn't worth the trouble it caused, but most folks understood that sometimes a man has to stand up for himself, especially when the system isn't designed to protect him. I never did get my grandmother's real engagement ring back from Vera. She'd probably sold it to pay for her escape from Calhoun. But that was fine. I had something better now, the knowledge that when push came to shove, I could push back harder than anyone expected. And in a town like Calhoun, where everyone knows your business, that kind of reputation is worth more than any ring. The last I heard, Pierce was working at a small insurance agency in Florida, making a fraction of what he'd earned here. Vara was working as a waitress in the same town, their grand romance having apparently lost its appeal once they were both unemployed and notorious. Me? I'm still here in Calhoun, still fixing up my house, still working construction jobs, still drinking beer at the Iron Pike with Riggs and the boys. But now when I walk down Main Street, people nod with respect instead of pity. They know I'm not the kind of man you can cheat, threaten, or intimidate, and that makes all the difference in the world.